가야 돼!
After the Squid Game ended, the man named Seong Ji-hun 45.6 billion won won in cash. He was told to go abroad by Wong In-ho, or called the frontman, who previously served as the person who organized the Squid Game. Even so, Ji-hun felt that if he let this game continue, more people would die from the deadly game. And in the end, Ji-hun decided to find the whereabouts of the front man so that he could stop the Squid Game. But first he had to make sure that there was no tracking device still attached to his body. On the other hand, after Junho managed to find the whereabouts of his brother who turned out to be a front man, he was shot by In-ho and fell into the sea. But without realizing it, he managed to survive the incident, after a fisherman found him who was drifting in the ocean. Long story short, 2 years later, Junho, who used to be a detective, finally decided to be reassigned. Became an ordinary traffic policeman whose job is to ticket citizens who violate the rules every day. Like this man who is willing to not wear a helmet to deliver his girlfriend, who turns out to have a crush on Junho because he is a policeman. Then while having lunch, the commander who used to be Junho's boss asked Junho to return to being a detective, because he never had a subordinate who was as good and as diligent as Junho in carrying out his work. But unfortunately, Junho refused the offer even though the commander had promised that he would raise his salary. It turns out that the reason Junho is willing to work as a traffic cop is so that he can have more free time, especially on vacation. So that he can use the free time to find the whereabouts of the mysterious island where the Squid Game is run, along with the fisherman named Captain Park who once saved him. For a year and a half, Junho has always used his free time to look for the whereabouts of Squid Game Island. He has even marked almost the entire island, which is 10 km away from where he was found. But still he could not find the whereabouts of the mysterious island. On the other hand, when the lovers wanted to stay at one of the motels, for some reason they both got into a fight because the motel they visited turned out to be closed. And it seems that the motel is not an ordinary motel, but a motel that has been bought and used by Ji-hun as his hideout. One day suddenly someone rang the bell, even though Ji-hun had made sure that no one entered the motel. And when Ji-hun tried to open the door, how surprised he was because the person behind the door was the front man. Without realizing it, it turned out that it was all just his dream. And the person who rang the bell was not a front man but a loan shark named Mr. Kim, who used to lend Ji-hun money. But now he stopped being a loan shark and worked as Ji-hun's trusted man, because Ji-hun had a lot of money. For the past 2 years, especially in the summer, Ji-hun and Mr. Kim have been working together to find a mysterious man, who once invited Ji-hun to play the Squid Game. But it seems like they are having trouble finding him, because Ji-hun doesn't have any evidence of who the mysterious man really is. Ji-hun only knows a few characteristics of the man, such as his tall body, handsome face, and wearing an office suit and also carrying a suitcase. And most importantly, the man always carries a game tool called didachi, which he uses to play with his potential victims. Every day Mr. Kim and dozens of his men always go around the underground stations throughout the city of Seoul, while asking some people who are there. But somehow they could never find the mysterious man. Even one of Mr. Kim's men named Choi Woo-sok thought that Ji-hun was crazy, because he was willing to spend a lot of money just to find a man whose whereabouts were unclear. One day when Mr. Kim and Choi were enjoying their lunch, they suddenly saw 2 men playing didachi, and one of the men turned out to have the same characteristics as mentioned by Ji-hun before. So Mr. Kim immediately contacted Ji-hun while saying that he managed to find the mysterious man. Hearing that, Ji-hun told them both to follow the mysterious man wherever he went. But he warned Mr. Kim and Choi to be careful, because they still didn't know if the man was dangerous or not. While Ji-hun himself immediately slid to go to their location. Unfortunately, on the way Ji-hun was stopped by 2 policemen. One of them was Junho, because he was speeding on the road, which left Ji-hun no choice but to wait until the policeman finished checking his papers and gave him a ticket. After he finished without lingering, Ji-hun was back on the gas, so Junho was curious why the man looked like he was in a hurry. And when he tried to check his license number, Junho became even more curious, because the information about the man was not listed on the police website, other than his name and license plate. On the other hand, when Mr. Kim and Choi were observing the mysterious man from a distance, they wondered why the man was offering lottery tickets and bread to the homeless people there. They even thought that the man was actually a good person. But when he was done, for some reason the man threw away all the bread he had brought, and he trampled it right in front of the homeless people. Because he was very annoyed with the homeless people who preferred lottery tickets to taking food, even though they were all starving. Seeing that Mr. Kim and Choi finally realized that the man seemed to be dangerous because his attitude was very strange and unpredictable. Then when they tried to follow him into the small alleys, suddenly the man immediately gave them a surprise attack until they both fainted. Shortly thereafter, when Ji-hun arrived at the last location shared by Mr. Kim, he seemed to be late because they were no longer there. Even Ji-hun could not contact them both, without knowing that it turned out that the mysterious man was watching him from the top of the building. Meanwhile, in a room, the mysterious man told Mr. Kim and Choi to play a game called Russian roulette, which is a game that requires them to play suit, and whoever loses, then the man will punish them by shooting a revolver that only contains one bullet. After playing for a few rounds, somehow the mysterious man got bored, so he put 4 more bullets into the gun. So now Mr. Kim and Choi's chances of living were only 1 in 6. They then began to continue the game, but when Mr. Kim saw Choi, who was scared, for some reason Mr. Kim chose to give in, because he could not bear if he had to win against his newly married subordinate. And in the end, the mysterious man shot Mr. Kim until he died. On the other hand, when Junho tried to check the data about Ji-hun on his office computer, he also realized that the Ji-hun turned out to be the one who survived the Squid Game, which made him even more curious about what the Ji-hun was doing. After getting the address, Junho infiltrated Mr. Kim's headquarters to find out clues as to where Ji-hun lived. There was a subordinate who went back to the headquarters to get the weapons that were there. Then after he left, Junho finally got Ji-hun's file in the drawer. Ji-hun was confused about Mr. Kim's whereabouts, and he was surprised to see his hotel lights on. Finally he met the mysterious man. Without further ado, Ji-hun immediately said he wanted to meet the leader of the man. Ji-hun thinks the mysterious man is just their subordinate. The man also told that he used to be a worker at Squid Game, but one day he saw his father in the game and was forced to execute him. They will play a game of Russian roulette. A gun filled with 1 bullet will be randomized and they will take turns shooting each other until one of them dies. They also took turns shooting each other until it left 2 more shooting opportunities. And this time it was Ji-hun's turn. Ji-hun, who was no longer afraid, pulled the trigger, but the gun was still not fired. It was certain that the bullet would end the mysterious man's life. And the mysterious man, who was a gentleman, kept his word. Junho also entered the hotel after hearing gunshots. Ji-hun then took a card that was in the mysterious man's pocket. Junho found Choi Woo-sok tied up and went to Ji-hun's room. Ji-hun was accused of murder, but fortunately there was Choi who paralyzed Junho. Choi explained that he was Mr. Kim's men, and he was very sad that Mr. Kim had died because of this mysterious man. Next we will see a woman sleeping in the parking lot of the playground, and she was kicked out by the guard who was there. Ji-hun finally remembers the detective Junho who met him at home that day. Junho also said he was one of the masked men at the time, but he was only there to infiltrate to find his brother's whereabouts. Ji-hun talked about his intention to stop this Squid Game, and he really wanted to find out who was behind the Squid Game. In the end, they decided to work together to find the island where the game took place. Ji-hun would pay them anything to get information about the island and the Squid Game. Ji-hun even had a lot of weapons that he bought on the black market to facilitate this operation. Before carrying out the mission, Ji-hun had called his daughter named Seong-gaeong, who now lives with his ex-wife. But when Gaeong picked up the phone, for some reason Ji-hun was silent and crying, because he didn't know what to say to his daughter. Ji-hun then visited the house of his old friend, player number 218 named Cho Sang-woo, who used to be Ji-hun's enemy in the last Squid Game. And there he also saw Sang-woo's mother, who now lives happily with the younger brother of player number 67, Kong Se-byuk, named Kong Chol. During this time Jihyun tried to help the families and relatives of his friends whom he met while he was still in the game. He was even willing to spend a lot of money in order to save Kang Se-byuk's mother who was in prison in North Korea. Meanwhile in the middle of the city when the dolls had just finished participating in a parade and were about to rest, suddenly a little girl came which made them immediately wear their costumes again. And it seems that the little girl named Nyan just wanted to give a gift to the rabbit doll. Then when the rabbit doll named Noel was about to go home, she suddenly saw an ambulance coming to pick up Nyan. And when Noel wanted to return her hat she had heard one of the doctors who said that Nyan had a rare disease, namely blood cancer. Without realizing it, Noel was once a North Korean soldier who fled to South Korea after she shot her own superior. And not only that, she also has a little daughter who may be the same age as Nyan, which she was forced to leave because she could not return to North Korea. For several years Noel has been trying to ask for help from brokers to find the whereabouts of her child. But even though she has spent a lot of money she still can't find her daughter. One day suddenly someone came up to Noel while giving a paper, with a triangular square circle indicating that the person was from the Squid Game. And because Noel really needed a lot of money, she finally decided to call the number on the back of the paper. Noel then went to a place where there she entered a container. And without realizing it, it turned out that Noel was not registering as a player. But she signed up to become one of the triangular soldiers, namely the soldiers whose job was to execute the players. On the other hand, after Choi managed to gather some great people consisting of Special Forces veterans to join their mission, Jihyun also asked a doctor to replace one of his teeth with a tracking device in case something happened to him, so that Choi and Junho could search for his whereabouts with the tracking device. After all the preparations were completed without lingering, Jihyun and the others finally went to the address on the mysterious man's paper, which turned out to be a nightclub. And because that day coincided with the Halloween celebration, there were a lot of people who came to the club while wearing costumes and masks. So they had difficulty finding the front man's whereabouts. Then suddenly Junho saw some pink soldiers entering the club, but when he tried to chase them he seemed to be too late because one of the pink soldiers managed to make Choi faint, while the other soldier managed to take Jihyun away from there using a limousine car. While in the car Jihyun was finally able to chat with the front man through a speaker. And there the front man asked what Jihyun really wanted from him. So Jihyun replied that he wanted to stop the front man and also the Squid Game that had claimed thousands of victims. Hearing that, the front man laughed while saying that Jihyun could not possibly do it, because this game is funded by global elites from all over the world. And if Jihyun wants to stop this game then he must be ready to face the global elites. Even so Jihyun did not care about what would happen to him, as long as he could stop this very deadly game. And in the end Jihyun also asked the frontman to include himself in the next Squid Game. The next day Junho, Choi and the troops immediately set out to find Jihyun's whereabouts following his tracking device. When he woke up Jihyun was already at the gathering place for Squid Game participants with number 456. The guards explained the rules of the game. They have to do this game for 6 consecutive days. The man at the train station earlier named Myung-gi also asked for his cell phone because he wanted to check the crypto market. Because he talked a lot, the masked guard played the recording. And he turned out to be the owner of a YouTube account called MG Coin, and he had a lot of debt because his kryptonite failed.
444번 김남 30번 최수봉 100번 임종대.
Everyone here has a very large amount of debt. The masked troops also showed a piggy bank that will contain money. After the game is over the participants have the right to choose whether or not to continue the game. And will get the money. There was a mother and her son who accidentally joined the game. The mother joined the game because she wanted to pay off her son's gambling debts. The mother's name was Jiam Ya and her son was Yongshik. Participants were told to sign an agreement document before the start of the first game. Myung-gi was then visited by 2 victims of his crypto failure for following Myung-gi. These 2 people named Thanos and also Namgyu. They demanded that Myung-gi return their crypto money that had been lost as a result of following Myung-gi's words on YouTube. On the other hand, Junho and everyone else were heading to a location that was suspected to be the island where the Squid Game was located. This Thanos is apparently a famous rapper who is highly idolized by General Z, but they are not allowed to take pictures together. There is also a transgender woman who makes Ji-hun disgusted. There Ji-hun met his old friend Jungbae. Jungbae, who hasn't heard from Ji-hun for the past 3 years, is very worried about him. There Jungbae told him he had divorced his wife.
정보야, 지금부터 무조건.
On the other hand, Choi Woo-sok and his troops came to the place where the signal was located. Just like before, the first game is red light green light, and there Thanos seduces a girl number 196.
뭐야?
Choi found an angler. He searched the angler's belongings and found that the signal was from the angler's worm.
왜 그래, 뭐하냐?
이거 애들 노는 거네.
The man said he got the bait from someone on the dock.
여기 좀 보세요! 여기
Ji-hun also shouted to warn everyone that this game is not a game like usual. If they move, they will be shot dead immediately. But everyone there didn't seem to believe him. The front man watched from his room as usual, and the game began.
아는 사람이에요?
Ji-hun tried to help them all get through the game. But everything changed when girl number 196 moves because of a bee on her neck.